It comes like this. It plugs into your own television. So out of the back here, we've got a cable that's just connecting into a standard aerial input. In fact, it was quite a job trying to find a TV that would plug into this computer. So George, a few minutes ago, just did a race up to the other end of the physics building to try and find a monitor sufficiently old which would plug into this computer. It's a home computer that I got out of my parents' loft, actually. I think my dad bought it in about, I think it was probably December 1982. I think my dad used it most to start with, and then quite rapidly I got in it. I was probably about 11 years old at the time. And I basically taught myself to program using this thing here. This is the BBC Micro. So this is the BBC Model B Microcomputer. It was one of the earliest computers, one of the earliest home computers. And it was actually made for the BBC. So this was a time when computers were completely brand new. So nobody had seen computers. Computers weren't these all ubiquitous things that you have in homes and offices now. So people didn't really understand them. And so the BBC wanted to develop a project to introduce people to computers and programming, because this was going to be the next big thing, and the BBC thought this was going to be the next big thing. So they commissioned a company, a British company called Acorn, to make this computer, and then they badged it with the BBC badge. And the BBC did a series of TV programs using this computer to try and teach people how to program. A lot of people you find who are working professionally in computers now, computer programming, certainly at my age, their first experience of computer programming and computers will be something like this, or a ZX Spectrum, or a Commodore 64, or something like that. It's getting on a bit now, this computer, and so it tends to overheat after a while. So I've just taken the screws off so that we can actually take the top off. This is the central processing unit here. So this is a 6502 central processing unit. And that processor is running at 2 megahertz. So you compare that with the clock speed of modern computers, which is around about 2 to 4 gigahertz. So this is running about 1,000 times slower than your typical computer nowadays. It's got 32K of memory. That's 32,000 bytes of memory. This is the memory down here. This is the area down here is the memory. And all these chips amount to 32 kilobytes. That's 32 times 1,024 bytes of memory. So you compare that with a modern computer, which has now got something of the region of a gigabyte of memory. So you can see how much of a difference there is between the modern PC and these types of computers. But one of the really neat things about this is that it turns on instantaneously. So you don't have to wait for it to boot up. So if I do this and turn it off and turn it on, and that's it. It's ready to go. You just turn it on and it's ready to go. And the reason is because if I just move this keyboard here, so it's because that the software, the operating system of the computer, is stored on ROM, which is a read-only memory. It's a chip. So it's got no hard disk inside. It's got no disk drive attached to it at all, in fact. All the software that it needs to run is stored on this chip. So that when you switch it on, it's ready to go. And that means, let's put the cover back on again. And that means we can start programming it straight away. We can make it do stuff really straight away. And as you can see, when you turn it on, you're presented with this. It says here, the BBC Computer 32K, that tells us how much memory we've got to play with. Basic. So we've launched into the basic programming language. So we're not presented with any mice, pointers, windows, or anything like that, just a cursor. And we can start just immediately writing a computer program. So I can enter line 10, and let's try writing the simplest ever program ever written. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. I'm going to use the dreaded goto. Okay, so that's the first program that pretty much anybody ever writes when you learn to start programming. There you go. So it just prints hello world millions of times over until you tell it to stop. Press escape. And I can list that program back by typing list. And you say, basically, you start off with line 10. It says print hello world. And the second line just tells it to go back to line 10 again. I started just mucking about with the graphics. So this is, you can write programs to do, muck around with playing with text and things. But I wanted to start playing with graphics. So I can write a little program to Let's start another one. If I can remember the command to do it. This is going back a few years now. I'm going to tell it to repeat this program. We're going to choose a colour, a random colour each time. This computer's got one of 7 colours, or 8 if you include black. So that's how many colours you've got to play with. And then I'm going to just tell it to plot triangles everywhere. And the last thing I need to do is change it to a graphics mode. So if I type run now, it should just print triangles all over the place. So in various different colours. So it's not much to look at, but the beauty of it is you can get into programming so easily doing this, and you can start doing more fancy things like plotting circles and Lyassajou figures and things like that, and then you can make it do sounds by typing just one command at the command line like this. So you muck around with playing this. Stop that. So you muck around with sounds and graphics, and that's what I got into as a kid, and I spent ages and ages, probably far too long, learning how to program out of this user guide. At one point it had a ring binder on it, and I just spent my time reading this. This was my bedtime reading when I was a kid. It's a bit sad really, I suppose, but that's what I wanted to do. And
what does it feel like holding that book again if it was such a big part of your childhood?
It's quite unusual. I mean, it's quite unusual I actually kept it. I mean, some of the pages are turned upside down for some reason. But yeah, I couldn't bear to throw it away, really. I mean, I've got a lot of computers that I've had since, and when they've come to the end of their life, I've just thrown them away. I mean, they're just expendable. But this one, because it's the first one I ever had, it sticks to my fingers when I try to throw it away, and I can't get rid of it. And I'm sure a lot of people probably feel the same thing, the same way, actually. So they'll have a piece of technology, a first bit of technology like this, which they just can't bear to throw away. So this is a computer game called Elite. Elite was the first really proper game to use three-dimensional graphics. Right, so he's firing at us now. Sadly, I can still name that spaceship, which is a Cobra Mark III. So we've got some pirates, I think. Yeah.